Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm glad to welcome the participants of the 9th Capital Investment Forum, Russia Calling in Moscow. This year, the forum has gathered more than 2,000 guests from over 60 countries. Among them are major investors, the heads of leading Russian and foreign companies, well-established professionals in finance and investment. This means that Russia Calling has firmly established itself in the business calendar and has gained massive credibility. And undoubtedly, such representation bespeaks of the great interest to modern Russia and its potential. It demonstrates mutual aspiration for dialogue and cooperation. It is a key condition for boosting and developing business ties, for searching promising areas for investment. Russia is opening up such prospects for cooperation, especially now that our economy has overcome stagnation and its revitalization is of a more sustainable nature. Accordingly, gross domestic product has been on the rise for 4 quarters in a row. Dear colleagues, please don't be angry with me that I have to repeat certain things. I guess it's been mentioned before by other speakers, but I have to underscore certain aspects, and I'm delighted to do so. Moreover, the growth rate has exceeded 2% from the second quarter. The growth of industrial production for the 3 quarters stands at 1.8%. And this has greatly benefited the manufacturing. Among the leaders are car industry, pharmaceuticals, chemical industry, food industry, and electric equipment industry. It's important that Russia's economy is about to make a qualitative leap, which was not in the cards just a year ago. And what am I talking about here? First of all, dynamics. It is based on broadening of domestic demand and on ramping up the consumers and investments. And starting from May of this year, retail trade has been gaining more than 1%. First and foremost, thanks to the increase in real salaries. And for the 3 quarters of this year, it stood at 2.5%. The citizens do feel a certain lag in the increase of salaries, but it is now being restored. It's important for the social sphere and for the economy as well. According to preliminary estimations, the investment into the fixed capital for the 3 quarters grew by 4.2%. This is 2.5 times more than the GDP growth rate for the same period. Such advanced pace is fueling further growth. By the way, according to Ministry of Economic Development, the GDP growth for January-September stood at 1.8%, as I've mentioned. Secondly, we've reached a record low in inflation in the history of Russia, that is. As of October 16th, in annual terms, it was anchored at 2.7%. This allows us to forecast that at the end of this year, the inflation would be lower than the target of 4%. I'm aware that certain professionals are concerned with regard to such a low level of inflation. And low level, I mean for our economy considering its structure, and certain professionals feel there's a deflation threat for our economy. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that almost all the central banks, all the regulators all over the globe, which have inflation targets, show such exaggerated concern. It might be justified because risks still exist. And for an economy with such a structure as Russian economy, highly dependent on commodity market, this kind of economy faces a lot of threats nowadays. So I understand the activities of the central bank and their policies, them being so careful. But at the same time, I would like to highlight that price sustainability and no one can doubt that, plays an important role from the point of view of interest rates and for the macroeconomic stability in general. I believe that we are achieving sound results, inter alia thanks to the responsible budget policy and the tight strategies held by the central bank. The dependence of the federal budget on oil is solidly going down. If in 2014 oil and gas revenues brought in more than half of budget revenues, and to be more specific, 51.3%, this year oil and gas revenues stand at 39%. And in the upcoming 3 years, oil and gas revenues will form only 1/3 of all the federal treasury revenues. At the same time, I would like to highlight that the general revenues will be on the rise. The so-called non-oil and gas budget deficit is shrinking. At the same time, dear colleagues, we are well aware what kind of threats this non-oil and gas deficit might entail and what consequences we might face if we would ignore this. We are very aware of that. But in the conditions of an economic crisis, and I'm not going to mention the reasons for it, we should have thought about the social justice, about our citizens, the real salaries and the real incomes of which have dropped. And we've been cutting up our social expenses, and this was unjust. And any country of the world, and Russia included, wants to have social stability. And economy is interested in that, and investors are. And we needed to fuel and propel our economy, and this is exactly what we did by taking precise, targeted measures, and it yielded good results. We plan that in 2019, this non-oil and gas deficit will go down from the current 8.5% to 5.9% of the GDP. And the general deficit of the federal budget would be lower than 1% of the GDP. I would like to highlight that it has to contribute and is already contributing to stabilizing macroeconomic conditions. And we see that those efforts are not in vain and that the business circles are positively evaluating our efforts. The level of trust and the desire to invest in Russian economy is growing, including on the part of foreign business. And this is one more distinguished trait of the new qualitative leap of the Russian economy, which I mentioned previously. We observe the inflow of foreign direct investment to the non-financial sector. For the 3 quarters, it stood at $23 billion. This is 2.5 times more than over the same period last year. And this is a record for the last 4 years. The flow of investment and restoration of foreign trade turnover helps to consolidate the payment balance of Russia. Gold and current reserves are also on the rise for 13% since the start of the year. The ruble exchange rate has also stabilized. And just for your information, if at the beginning of the year, the gold and currency reserves stood at $377 billion, for the 13th of October, they stood at $427 billion. We are now facing a whole gamut of strategic tasks. Not only do we need to anchor those positive trends, but we need to give an additional impetus to Russia's economy and to substantially boost its efficiency. Once again, I would like to highlight we are not satisfied with the current growth pace. We need for them to exceed the global average. However, we are now limited by a number of structural restrictions. In order to overcome this, we need to use new sources for growth. First and foremost, ramping up labor productivity by modernizing the industry and launching new industrial facilities on the basis of modern technologies. For that, we will progressively improve business landscape in Russia. We will propel the competition and help to create more robust and convenient conditions for attracting investment. All that in order for those investments to deliver. And of course, we will pay more attention to boosting the quality of education and skills of Russian professionals, which are already highly assessed on the global scale. I regularly meet the representatives of Russian and foreign businesses, and one of the issues which was highlighted by my colleagues is the lack of highly qualified professionals. And we are working in that department to rectify the situation. And I'm delighted to mention that at the recent vocational skills competition, World Skills in Abu Dhabi, Russian team was placed at the top of the point scored leaderboard. It's great that not only our team won the first place, but we only joined this movement in 2012. And in 2013, we took part in those competitions for the first part, and we were placed last. We occupied the 41st place, but now we are the leaders. So the dynamics and the pace of qualitative changes is really admirable. At the same time, our junior team won the junior skills competition, which was held on the global level for the first time. The second source of growth is the boost and the implementation of the export potential of Russia's economy. Over the course of the recent years, a lot has been done. The volume of non-commodity, non-energy exports is growing. For the 8 months of this year, it grew by 18.6% to $77 billion. This constitutes 35% of Russia's total exports. Great results can be observed in engineering. For example, the volume of supplies of civil machines and equipment for foreign buyers over the course of 8 months of this year have gone up by 16.9% and now stand at $10.8 billion. At the same time, I would like to underscore a surge of export in Russian machines and equipment to the European Union countries for 15% to $2.1 billion. And Europe, as you are all well aware, is a very competitive, saturated, traditionally hard to enter market. And our agro industry is now moving on to a different model of development. It is becoming the biggest non-commodity exporter in our country for the period from January to August. The foreign supplies of food and raw materials grew by 19.6% and stood at $11.9 billion. That's only for the period from January to August, and the height of autumn is there. We've just collected the harvest, and we have the potential. And in 2016, as already been mentioned, maybe not all of you have actually noticed, the export of food and agricultural production grew by 4.9%. And that translates into $17.1 billion. And in 2016, we sold weapons for $15.3 billion. The export of agricultural goods is now exceeding the exports of arms. And in order to further galvanize non-commodity export, we will continue to lift infrastructural and administrative obstacles in our path to make the support tools more efficient. First of all, the insurance and crediting systems, facilitation of product certification, and defending the rights of our producers when they enter foreign markets. I understand that the investments we are making are not enough, and we are going to increase our investment, all those support tools, at the same time as our budget opportunities will increase. Major prospects for our exporters and in general for advancing cooperation and investment ties are opened by the integration of processes in Eurasia. In the same vein, we are developing trade and business relationship with the key countries of Asia, the Middle East, and other regions of the world. One more potential source of growth for Russia's economy, helping to boost the efficiency of our education system, healthcare, social sphere, and public management, is digitalization and broad introduction of information technologies. I'm sure that the development of digital economy, the launch of new business models, will help Russian companies to become more competitive, and in general will help them to diversify economy, to create a boost for the development of areas and markets based on disruptive technologies, and to ensure higher standards of life for our citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, Russia has adhered to conservative, restrained budget and monetary policies. And this approach has proven fruitful. It brought about the much-needed sustainability of our economy, the stability of public finance and banking. It laid the groundwork for positive long-term development. And now, based on the results achieved, we need to move on. And I'm talking about all the problematic areas for the growth of Russia's economy. We see them and we know what to do about them. We need to strike a proper balance between keeping sustainability and providing proactive support to the new economic growth drivers. This is why we need to focus resources on investments in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. There is nothing new about that. This is a truism which is unanimously defended by the professionals and pundits all over the world, and Russia is no exception. We're well aware of what we are to do. First and foremost, we need to invest into human resources of our country. And of course, we need to significantly broaden the opportunities of the banking system to create a flow of credit into the economy, first of all, the real economy. Efficient, calibrated implementation of these steps will directly affect further sound development of Russia, as well as the surge of investment activities and the success of all business endeavors. Colleagues, friends, we are open for cooperation and partnership. I hope that it will be successful for Russia and for our partners abroad, for the Russian and for foreign companies. I know that you have great volume of work ahead. I would like to thank you for your invitation to make a statement here. All the best to you. Thank you very much for your attention.